Great. So here we are on our fifth podcast with my co-host, Jocelyn Sokol. Jocelyn.
Hi, how are you? Hi,
And,
Gary.
and we have an incredible guest today from way up in Vermont. What a terrible place to be hunkered down, Gary. You look like you're in in a great setup up there. And Gary, I've been fortunate enough to know for I guess about a year and a half now. We met through a great connection. We are both disciples of the great Rob Gilbert that teaches out of Montclair State. And Rob knows every one of, Gary knows every one of Rob's stories, and so do I. So we are really connected there. Gary is a certified mental trainer in the area of sports psychology, which is just so intriguing and so hot right now. I mean, every pro team now is bringing on a Gary Prichard, as well as a life coach. And he's really in it to transform people, inspire people to become their best self. Gary himself was a coach for 20 years out of Bayshore High School. He's a soccer guru, works with teams all over our area, works with business communities, and is the proud owner of 3 amazing boys, and I know a great husband. So Gary, we're so happy to have you here, and thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Jocelyn. It's great to see you. I'm so
too.
happy that we get to have this connection again, Jim. It's always a pleasure to have time with you. Yeah, sometimes it's like we get like dry twigs, but it's like a fire starter when we get together a lot.
Great.
So, Gary, we're finding that some of our clients are having overall a much harder time than others, and some are actually almost benefiting from this time. So, what are you finding with your clients?
About the same. I'll give you an interesting scenario. One of my clients is in the performance world, and his world has not really changed very much because of this environment. He's in studios, and he's works a lot by himself, and has some interaction, obviously, in terms of his social gatherings and so on. But in terms of his workplace, his 9 to 5, if you will, it is not much different than it was for him before. And I think it's interesting also, and Jim and you and I talked about this briefly on a phone call one time about the difference between people who are more creative, let's say left side versus right side brain, and how overall, and I don't want to stereotype anybody, but how interesting those two differences are. Have you guys seen that with some of your clients?
Yeah, very different.
Certainly the differences of right brain and left brain clients, but not necessarily specific to this time. So how would you describe that connection?
To this time, the left side, I think that we kind of just talked about. The right side is, they're very structured, and they have their routine right down to those people that pay for the gym membership and they go religiously at 8 o'clock, and all of a sudden the gym's closed. And how it's disrupted their whole routine, and they really are struggling to keep some type of normalcy, some type of standard routine going now that that's gone, to kind of reinvent. And I think the right word in a lot of cases is that ability to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're all challenged by that. Certainly in my field, one of the biggest challenges that athletes have is that it just doesn't go the way it's supposed to go. Yeah. So how quickly can we take the situation as it is, and can we adapt to it?
Yeah,
and make it work?
So what I find, and you and I have this common bond, is you work with athletes who are theoretically in challenging situations. Now, in the big picture, maybe a sports game doesn't compare to acting as a healthcare worker or ER doctor, but they're still in high stakes environments. I know you've worked with high level athletes who all of a sudden, the environment becomes very rugged and uncertain. And you teach them to stay in a certain state. You work with them. You give them skills and tools to help them be at their best when the environment's the worst. So as we are life athletes, everyone's in, I say the term I heard you say, shared suffering. Everyone is in uncertain terms. So what skills that you've taught your athletes are so apropos and so perfectly work that we can use in our everyday challenges with COVID-19?
Great question, Jim, and kind of pigtail along with what you said, Jocelyn. I think the biggest one is controlling the controllables. There's so much about life that we have no control over. And just like the game in sports, there's so many things between refs, weather, fields, parents, teams, other teams, coaches. It just goes on and on. And now what do we have? We have issues with uncontrollables, with masks and ventilators and new job descriptions, no job, areas of restriction in terms of your family. You got children that can't go off to college. There were weddings that were going to have, but I mean, the list goes on and on. So many uncontrollables. But what we can control, obviously, is ourselves. And most importantly, it's our effort. Are we just going to lay down and roll over and crawl into a ball and say, oh, this is horrible? Or are we going to go out there and continue with our routine and make the effort to get out and do what we can do?
Yeah.
Hey, your attitude. Are we going to stay positive, or are we going to become negative Nancy's here and let the whole thing implode on us? By trying to find the good in everything that's going on a day-to-day basis. There is good. There's so much good coming from this, as you have known. I mean, Jocelyn, I'm sure you see families and connections and things that would never happen because everybody was so busy doing or scheduled.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is that we can control is the difference between reacting and responding. We have a choice of our effort. We have a choice of our attitude. We have a choice of how we choose to respond to each one of these different unfortunate circumstances that we're faced with. And the idea behind it is in that moment of choice, there's an incredible amount of power that gives us, and it helps to offset a lot of the uncontrollables by saying, yes, I can't control that, but I can control this.
Great. Beautiful answer, Gary.
Yeah. Jim was sharing with me that you had mentioned to him that you feel like the world needed some kind of resetting. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. I think, Mother Nature resets us sometimes with horrific things to remind us about her wonderful place that we live in and we're part of and we're connected to. And I think that a lot of people just were going along in what I would call a very unconscious state and just going through the motions and doing this routine. It's like the treadmill. It's such a habit. And all of a sudden, somebody picked up the needle. It's like, right? It's like, what happened? I can't do anything I used to do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's like a little rattle of the cage saying, hello, now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I think that I think there's in a spiritual sense, Jocelyn, I think that it's raising our level of consciousness in general as people. Mm-hmm. And when we raise the vibration of consciousness, this is when we start to realize that we're more than just ourselves. We're not in our little world. All of a sudden, this COVID thing has shown us how connected we really are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the nice things I like about you is you look fairly normal. But when you get to know you, you realize you're not very normal. And you've got a lot of little interesting idiosyncrasies or little beliefs, or I know you're a crystal guru. I know that you have a lot of mantras that you utilize. I know you're a rowing guru that rose into meditation. Tell us just a couple of your really Garyisms that no one would ever know, and people might say you're crazy, but you believe.
That's interesting. I think I don't have any isms. I guess if you got me going, I'm sure something would come out of it. You know how it is. Sometimes it's better on when we're on our just discussing a certain thing. But I think the biggest thing for me is that, and I got it from Dr. Gilbert. Great people do their best when they feel like it least. Yeah. And during this COVID thing, there's a lot of great people that haven't felt really, really good. And some of them, regardless of how they're feeling, have raised that level and are doing more. I mean, Jim, look what you're doing in a day. Didn't you have yoga at 9? You had a session with Jocelyn at 11. You've got some big thing this afternoon, and you're coaching in between there. I mean, you're a beast. And so I think that's one that resonates with me right now, is that great people do their best when they feel like it least. They don't allow the emotions and that entanglement to knock them off of who they are. And, remember that Zen story of the farmer with his horse and that whole thing of, is it really bad or is this really good?
Yeah, I love the story.
So, the net of the story, Jocelyn, I don't know if you know the story, but the net of the story is that this farmer is out looking in the field all over the place, and his neighbor notices that he seems to be frantic. He goes, "What's wrong?" He said, "I've lost my horse. I can't find my horse." And of course, the neighbor's like, "Oh, this is terrible. You need your horse to plow the fields and get to town. What are you going to do?" And he said, "This is terrible." And he said, "Well, we'll see." The next day, the horse returns and has 11 other horses with him. Now the neighbor's out there going, "Wow, this is fantastic. You are so well. You're the wealthiest man in the valley. You've got all these horses. Isn't this great?" He said, "We'll see." A week later, while training the horses, his son gets thrown and breaks his leg. The neighbor, "Oh, this is terrible. What are we going to do? Your son is your main breadwinner and helps you with everything." "We'll see." And of course, the last part of the story is the government comes around indoctrinating all of the young 17 and over men into the army. And they get to the house, and of course, his son can't go because of the broken leg. We'll see. So I think one of the mantras that I would put behind this, whether it's sports or life, no matter what happens to us any time, is it really, really great, or is it really bad, or it just is?
Yeah.
We never know what good is until we have experienced bad or unfortunate. And we don't know what unfortunate is until we know what really good is. And I think that's one, Jim. See, it fell out.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Jocelyn, you want to finish up?
Yeah, just, what are thoughts of what we could do to keep this going, to perpetuate this higher level of social consciousness? Because just thinking of 9/11 in our country, we did all feel connected and like one. And I do think it lasted, for some time, but then, slowly but surely kind of started to trail off. So what can we do to continue whatever, blessings we do get from this experience together?
Wow, what a great takeaway and a great learning idea. Isn't it true that, you get out the other side of whatever it is in our life we go, and it's one thing to experience, but it's another thing if you don't wake up and go, all right, what am I going to take away? What am I going to learn from that? So Jocelyn, that's beautiful. I think one of the things is that that we have to recognize and nurture our human connection with other people, and to become much more eye contact, stop burying ourselves in our phones, get more on a level where when you walk down the street, you nod. I mean, in New York City, it's impossible. I mean, every time I go to New York, I have a real problem because my wife always says, "Will you stop trying to make eye contact with every person? You're going to explode." But on a regular basis in our social networks, to be able to be more engaged So that's one. Number two is to be more present. And being present means that you're not focused on what happened yesterday. You're not already thinking about the next thing you've got to do or what the do, but you're really focused on where am I right now? And when I'm here, I'm all here. When I'm talking to Jim, I'm all on Jim. No matter what's going on behind it, I am totally dialed in. And you hit it on the last part, Jocelyn, about we have a lot to be grateful for, right? And I think to never let that attitude of gratitude drop. If anything, Jim, you've talked about, even journaling, where you just say, what is it about today that was so wonderful? And recall all the things that you're grateful for. Jim, I do a thought of the day. And one of the things that I got forced into is after I do the quote for the day, I force myself at the bottom to say, what am I grateful for? And it's a trigger for me because sometimes we all need a little push, right? A little nudge.
Well, this is a little bit of stoicism. Steal this from Marcus Aurelius or Seneca. You know what you are? You're just a good guy. That's all. You're just a good human being that's consistently good. And if you could be a consistently good person for your life and have integrity and tremendous empathy and caring for others and do your best, gosh, when you end your life, you've had a great life. So you're a symbol of being a good person, Gary. We're flattered to have had you on. Your answers, I could listen to you talk forever, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Oh yeah, Jocelyn, thank you so much. Your thoughts stir some things that I need to focus a little bit about. I need to write a few things down on what is it I'm actually going to take away from that. I think that was a great exercise for me through this conversation I can do a little more work on. So thank you for that. And guys, I'm so grateful for this opportunity. You're the best.